Very cool.
I always like to record.
Sick. Will I be able to get a copy of that afterwards as well for myself to look at? Thank you.
Of course, my friend. You get all the assets.
Thanks, Andrew. Wonderful. Well, I know I saw some of you at the showcase as well. What an excellent event. Thanks. Kudos to Momina. Thank you for that. And then, cool. How many of these people are actually people and just note takers?
There'll be more coming.
About half. Cool. Shall we do, I might just like do introductions, and by the time I'm done there, we'll be on the workshop material. Does that sound good?
Yeah, cool. Does everyone know you're coming today? I think we emailed everybody, right? Yeah, so everyone knows. So I don't need to do an introduction to you. Everyone kind of probably knows you by now.
I think so. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about myself very much, guys. Who wants to? I'll do like a little bit, but you guys know I'm Angus. I'm Creative Frontier, creative founder and director. I had a first business, and that wasn't a failure by any means, but it was a training ground for me into what I'm doing now, which is how to give storytelling the professional attractiveness that it needed to start connecting to people in different industries who could go, I see where story fits into my professional life. And so far that's going really well, because we do have a client now, and we've got conversations with other professionals. It's a lot of like sort of solo founders or early startups, and the goal is to get onto sort of more smaller businesses now, but we're just in that great space of working really intimately with people now and helping them create content creatively, which is also the name of this workshop, to be getting their story moving down different channels now that starts unlocking opportunities for the founder, for the business. And I'll go into more detail about all that in the workshop. So let me just share my screen and I'll present. Perfect. Cool. Everyone can see that, yeah?
Yep.
Thank you. Great, because I can't see anyone. Thank you. Yeah, thumbs up. That's perfect. Sick. Let me move that guy over there. So Creative Frontier. This is a Creative Frontier workshop. So it's like a different branch of the business. And then the other branch is, of course, working with people on content retainers or advising them on how they could be building their own story better as well, which we're also doing. I've got 2 people in that cycle right now where I advise them weekly on the way that they're putting their story out there on LinkedIn and things like that. Cool. But this is about creating content creatively for you guys and the skills that you can take to then the people that you're working for and with. I know some of the people who are on my team are in this call, so I hope that they're listening and taking notes as well. I'm hoping as well you all have paper and pens or something to note take with. My preference is pen and paper, just because you actually do remember it better than typing. And when we sort of get into the activities, I think it's great. But you do whatever your preference is, ultimately. I just wanted to do a very quick acknowledgement. I'm delivering this from Wurundjeri land, some of the first storytellers in Australia. So for me, storytelling also has this really deep connection to the land that I'm on, and it's a privilege to sort of be involved in continuing that part of Australian culture through the storytelling that I do, whilst respecting what's come before me. So I just give my respect to elders past and present. Great. So let's kick off, right? What is content if not another vehicle for storytelling? Content is not supposed to be filler, but many businesses and people do treat it that way. But storytelling that envelops and consumes the client or the audience increases close rate by 20%, right? In the context of deal closing, storytelling is super powerful. People are also 22 times more likely to remember a story than just facts alone. Some of you may be working with people who are like data consultants or something like that. Numbers are super duper important. And so your content's going to reflect numbers. But your job with the creative brain is to figure out, well, what is the story hiding amongst those numbers? How can I make these facts more interesting through some kind of narrative? Going on to the next slide. I just want to go over some key outcomes as well. We want you to walk away with this really practical knowledge and upgrade in the way that you think. So that number 1 is like understanding the superpower of taste, because we all have taste when it comes to art, movies, food. But what about taste when it comes to content? You're going to come away being able to structure a post better. That's like physically, the way that you use and arrange, say, a LinkedIn post in the context of this workshop, how you use white space, but also in just the construction of the words. You'll be able to measure through the activities that we're doing a real difference in your ability to do this for yourself and for clients by the end of the workshop. And because of that, you'll just feel more confident when you step out and next create personal or client content. And you can tell me in a sternly worded letter if you don't afterwards. So here's kind of the agenda. I'm going to establish just some ground rules for the activities that we're going to be doing. We're going to do then some redefining of creativity and writing, because it is something that needs to be redefined, because popular understanding's wrong or misleading. We're going to look at creative philosophy and what I mean by that as part of that taste discussion. And then we're going to look at 4 out of the 10 values to write by. So that's kind of my Creative Frontier IP. That kind of informs how we create content. And then, what comes next out of this opportunity that Campus Life has provided for you. So just some ground rules. There'll be a couple of activities which will be really fun, but basically out of that, we'll have some opportunities to share with the floor as well. I will open the floor to that when the time comes. And when people are sharing, we're just listening and looking at them, right? It's not an opportunity to look at our phones or something like that. Everybody who's talking will have something valuable to share. Silent writing activities are silent. I mean, you're probably all on mute right now anyway. I can't see. But, take it seriously because this is how you will improve by committing to the activities. And then everything that's said as well, totally open to disagreement on any points or, different views of thinking and stuff like that. But we're all in this space to learn. So just being receptive to feedback and new ideas. So we're going to jump straight into our first activity, which is a reflective one. If you guys want to just open LinkedIn on your laptops or phones or whatever it is, and actually look at what is the last LinkedIn post that you put on your own LinkedIn. And then I would love for you to type in the chat, what does it say about you? What is your last LinkedIn post saying about you as a professional, as a person, as a brand? That won't take very long. I'll give you 2 minutes. And if there's nothing posted, right, what does having nothing posted say about you as well? So you can either put it in the chat, your response, but you can also come off mute and tell me as well. Cool. Congratulations, Andrew. That's good. Last LinkedIn post is a sign of growth. Yeah. So Mom and his personal brand is all about Bob right now, right? Like, is Mom anything else besides Bob? Might be the question to ask. So it's a repost talking about my marketing career journey and how I ended up here as a marketing coordinator. The latest post is about a LinkedIn course I completed. So Sarah, you look like a learner. Fantastic. My last post was about starting as an intern at CampusLife. Cool. Yeah, amazing. So there's a common theme, like we're seeing like accomplishments, recent events, those sorts of things. Yes, Adnan.
Hello, Angus. How are you?
I'm swell. How are you? Did you raise your hand to ask me how I was?
No. Yeah, so my last post, funny enough, it was inspired by you after we had a chat over LinkedIn. So it was about reaching out to go ahead and get people to start networking with me and just giving me tips and ideas. I mean, I don't know what my hook was. I didn't really have a clear written hook. It was just that I had a picture with a tennis player, Stan Wawrinka. I thought that was maybe gonna be my hook so that people would just stop and try and read. I was just trying to do something. I mean, that's just my second post on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
My call to action was to, for anyone to give me any advice. I think it was pretty clear. based of my judgment. And when did I want to stop reading? I just went back and read it again. And I think 2 or 3 paragraphs into it, I was like, nah, I'm done.
Yeah.
It was too long, actually.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that, Adnan. I was kind of hoping that you'd bring that up, because I thought yours was a really good example of, like, it had really good engagement because it was like this personal post about your experience. You're looking for this opportunity. You were putting yourself out there while celebrating an accomplishment, while celebrating like your growth as a person, putting yourself out there. And hey, I'm applying this advice that I just heard from this person who I was listening to. Thank you very much, by the way. That was a real compliment to me, I thought. Now, let me jump back into the thing. Tiana was upset there because you didn't go to her first. So you did get me in trouble. Thanks for that. No, anyway, we'll move on from that. I think we've established that. So doing some breaking down of definitions, writing and creative writing, those two words together, I think frequently misunderstood. I've spent a lot of time talking to different people who are doctors, lawyers, or marketers, etc. And I say, "Oh, you're a creative writer, right? Great. I'm not a creative writer. I could never do something like that." And then I ask, say, a doctor, "Well, did you recently write like a report on a patient?" And they go, "Yeah." And I go, "Well, look, that was kind of creative. You had to think about what information was key in presenting about their case study and stuff like that. Like, it requires thinking. Writing is naturally is one way of expressing yourself, which ties in what creativity is. And this is a better way to view it. Creativity isn't like some special skill that you have and somebody else doesn't, or that I have and you all don't, right? We all have it because it's the way that we view the world. That's inherently creative. The difference, though, between, say, me and somebody else, though, is how much do me compared to that other person use that muscle of creativity? How often are we expressing ourselves in a novel way? And maybe are we, say, trying to express ourselves in ways that are not true to us and therefore limiting our creativity? And writing is a medium to do that. And that's something that I spend a lot of time doing. So writing is a tool in the same way a hammer is a tool to build a house. Writing is a tool to build a brand. And so how you use it is what makes it creative. And there's John. I've met him. That was cool. So like any tool with writing, it's learnable and adaptable. For those of you who are more into the visual elements or the graphic elements, going through today, you'll see how these truths apply to that as well. But now we need to talk about creative philosophy. Now, I'm not meaning like, philosophy like Karl Marx or something like that. I'm talking about, this is really just a fancy way to say, how do you view the world? And that informs your creative philosophy. Because creativity is an expression of self. Now, we're looking specifically at clients' creative philosophy, and we're about to look at, if I go to the next slide, campus life. So thinking about how does campus life choose to express themselves? And that'll make sense when we get to the activity. But you can also spend a little bit of time in the back of your brain thinking about, well, what's your creative philosophy? What's important to you? For Adnan, that was, I want to get out there. I want to get into the world. My way of expressing is connecting and learning from people who have things that are interesting to me. And so he made a LinkedIn post that demonstrated that and started building a bridge to people who could do that for him. So the content that you're making for clients, is it building bridges or is it just filling space, right? And, even the LinkedIn algorithm doesn't really reward filler as much anymore. It doesn't want filler. It wants stuff that's getting actual resonant engagement with people. And that's what this workshop is about. How do we create content that's resonating with our client's audience? So thinking about our client today, which is Campus Life, sort of have a think, what is Campus Life's creative philosophy, AKA how does Campus Life express itself to the world? And here's a short activity as well. In one sentence, write down Campus Life's creative philosophy. Then from that sentence, shrink it down to one word. And if you do that really fast, you can try and do your own. I'll give you 2 minutes for that, but I've given you some examples there. For example, Campus Life aims to so-and-so. Campus Life is that one word. So I'll give you 2 minutes. And you can type this in the chat as well. I think you're taking the mickey out of me, Andrew. CampusLife is one word.
I know, but if you look at our branding online, it's in 2 words. It's in 1 word. Because
Yeah.
back in the day, we originally was 1 word, and then we changed it. So don't do that, people. Stick with your logo. It's so hard to change it. But yes.
All right. You've got a minute left to put your
Come on, Pelly. I
responses
want to see what Pelly has to say.
into the chat. Yeah, come on. You've got 40 seconds.
I like the launch pad. That's a good word.
Cool. So here we've got CampusLife aims to provide a launchpad for any young creative who's getting started. CampusLife aims to bring you closer to the real world. CampusLife aims to create opportunities for students to gain hands-on experience in marketing field through training programs and connection with real businesses. Perfect. We'll get a few more. CampusLife is about bridging the gap between theory and real-world experiences. CampusLife aims to shorten the bridge between theoretical learning and practical marketing experience. Cool. Okay, I think we're seeing some really similar themes here, which is good. That means the branding of CampusLife is working very well, and how its messaging is being communicated. What's 1 word then to describe CampusLife that isn't its name? What's its creative philosophy in a word? Is it like impact, perhaps, or something like that? You don't have to answer. Just sort of think about what that 1 word is, and I'll keep moving. So let's briefly touch on generative AI. I'm not going to spend a whole deal talking about it, but in the marketing industry especially, you do need to think about how it can make your work more efficient, but also how it can impact your work negatively too if you are using it sort of irresponsibly. So it's all on a spectrum, right? How much you use it. There are some tasks that are perfect for 100% AI usage and some that should probably be 100% you. But most tasks fall into that range of the middle mark. If we look at how AI is affecting marketing, from the Canva report that they did recently, right, 53% of marketers' use of AI is text generation. That's like the #1 use is text generation. And then just below that, 51% is text refinement. So that's a great example of where it's really, really useful. But then in terms of, like, say, combating the LinkedIn algorithm, if it picks up that it's mostly AI, it's like, I'm not going to promote this post. So you still got to put effort into creating authentic content, but you can be really sped up by AI, which is fantastic. And, all those different tools, if you're doing research, you're writing a research paper for a client because they, again, in data consultancy perhaps, and they want to do like a cool article, use Claude, right? Use Anthropic. If your client is really big on video, then probably check out VEED.io, which is this amazing platform that's currently in beta. There's a lot of great stuff. So find the right one for your client that lines up with their creative philosophy, and what the sort of content they want to be putting out. Now let's talk about LinkedIn, the do's and don'ts. This is a list that is ever-changing, but this is what I've written down based off my market research, which I'm doing every week, basically, because this is kind of my bread and butter. So things to do. LinkedIn punishes the hard sell. That should be in don't, actually. So don't hard sell, right? Because it really punishes it, as opposed to like a personal post, which is boosted by about 300% last time I checked. So you can imagine when you sort of do a hard sell in a LinkedIn post, you're kind of like losing 300% of exposure, right? So it's ways of like weaving personal branding and professional points getting across in a way that can leverage the algorithm. Engagement in the first hour and even in the first 5 minutes is vital for post longevity. But in saying that, the LinkedIn algorithm is now a bit friendlier to showing posts that are relevant rather than recent as well. So a 2-week-old post, that's why we had that happening. All those 2-week-old posts were like just reappearing, and you're like, why are these posts coming back in my feed? It's because LinkedIn had been playing with its algorithm. Know the brand. This is like a really big one. When you're putting content out there on LinkedIn for your client or yourself, but especially for a client where maybe the consequences might be a bit bigger if you get the brand wrong in the way you present it and it gets approved somehow. But you need to know the brand and how the brand views itself and how the audience views the brand as well, because they might be different modes of communicating that you need to do for content that is like for the client communicating to other businesses, which would view the brand the way that your own business views it, as opposed to people who might be your clients, which are looking for different content. So for example, I'm storytelling agency for individuals. People are looking like, well, how can I use my story to unlock opportunities to get into rooms where I can keep talking about my story? I'm working with a young woman who wants to do a public speaking career, right? But the way that I say communicate to businesses is, well, how could your story, say, unlock higher customer retention because they're buying into your brand, creating loyalty? It's different messaging. Content has to reflect different messaging for the different ways that your customers view your brand. Eye-catching title, obviously. Don't do something super duper boring like, the title of an article that I might put out would be, this is my post about apples. That's pretty boring. But what if I put a post of apples are changing how I view AI? That's bizarre, but you're probably more likely to read it. Relevant photos, not always essential, right? But photos help. Spell check, fact check. That's something AI can do for you. But fact check the fact check. People, company tags, make sure they're correct, right? That's a classic blunder that is still happening. Make sure you're tagging the right people. The frequency of posting as well for your client, that can depend on, are they an early stage founder that has a lot of expertise but not a whole lot of authority and needs to just getting out there? They might need more frequency of content as opposed to an established client and business. And then ultimately, the key question is, would someone repost this content? Would they share it? Would they save it? Would they send it to someone? Because that's the biggest way that you get organic reach, is somebody else reposting it. And then ultimately, just in line with all that, is the post that you're doing working with the algorithm or against it, and just weighing that. And then on the don't side, right, mindless cliches. People love cliches, but don't use them if it's not actually adding anything, because a cliche poorly used also just confuses the reader in the same way a bad metaphor or a bad simile or something like that, or a bad analogy confuses them. Don't be a parrot. We all like repost content on LinkedIn. That's completely fine. But don't bother doing it if you don't have a novel take to do, because again, LinkedIn kind of just views that as like an irrelevant contribution to the discussion and won't get highlighted as much. Posts that perform better are posts that get really meaningful engagement in the comments. Comments are where the real discussion is happening now. Don't write like everybody else, obviously. And this is where understanding a client's creative philosophy comes in key. Never publish a first draft either. There's always at least one mistake. That's even coming from me. I always have mistakes in my first drafts. You can use AI as a quality assurance check. If you have somebody else readily available, use them as well. Make sure your paragraphs, right, when you're writing all your sentences, are they connected, or do they all feel like standalone things that probably could be viewed as their own separate post? So is there unity in what you've written? And then spraying and praying with your content strategy. This might work if like you're just trying to experiment with stuff, but maybe have a different account where you're experimenting, unless you can do it safely and not, say, harm your algorithm, not harm and confuse your audience as well. So it's often just better to err on the side of caution and go focused and go deep and just repeat that time and again and build an authentic audience that loves what you're doing and resonates with it. Great. So now we're just going to spend some time reading through this LinkedIn post of mine. It's 3 slides. So it's all one post, but it's 3 different slides just because of how long it is. We're just going to take some time reading through it to think about everything I've been talking about so far, and start to like clock what's good about this LinkedIn post, because this one performed really well and got me some really good eyeballs from key industry figures. So if you could, when you finish reading, just like thumbs up or put a message in the chat so I can go to the next slide. Thanks. Yes, Lara?
Sorry, I meant to put up my thumb to say I was finished reading.
All right, cool. I'm going to go to the next slide, team. Okay, if you're not reading all of it, of course, just get through as much of it as you can. Give me a vibe. How are you with this slide? Can I go to the last one? Cool. Correct. All right, and then this is the last one. Perfect. So as you're just kind of finishing that up, I'm not going to talk about this lots right now, but we're going to come back to it at the end and have a read through and sort of, I'm going to open to you guys like getting what have we talked about across the course of this workshop that is really effective in this post. But I just wanted you to look at it and have an example that we can now refer back to at the end after we've gone through everything else. Cool. So it's time to kind of talk about some of the values to write by and the ones that are relevant to creating great content creatively. So the 4 that we're looking at voices, trust. That's kind of the foundational value. And then the 3 that branch off of that is like, know what you're really saying, rewrite without mercy, every word works. So they're much like refining the voice, but understanding the voice and getting that across is the most important one, first of all. So voice is trust. Part of voice is diction. So, you know, there's diction in the way that I'm talking. I have a certain style of speaking, you know, and then there's an example there from a movie I really love. The rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain. If somebody talks like that to you, the diction, they sound like a proper snob. You know, so diction is how we come across, and the way that you've written words for a client and the way that they are then read, they will sound a certain way in somebody's mind. Because we spend most of our lives talking. So when we read words off the page, like when you read a fiction book, you're imagining how they're saying it in real life. So you've got to think about if you're trying to come across as friendly and supportive, you know, through your client's content to your audience, has the word choices that you've chosen and the way you've structured it, is it going to sound in their heads supportive and helpful, as an example. Just like an example, this is usually a fun activity that I get us to do, but we don't have time, so I'll just like go through it. But a definition of diction, you know, the choice and use of words and phrases in speech or writing. That's what diction is. So writing a sentence correctly has a certain magic to it. You know, we have sort of a bunch of really famous phrases down there that are unfinished. Like I have a dream this afternoon, right? Martin Luther King. We're going to build a wall. You know, an infamous sentence from a certain politician that we all know. A house divided against itself cannot stand. Abraham Lincoln. Do you feel lucky, punk? Sturdy Harry. It's Clint Eastwood. And then say hello to my little friend, Scarface, Al Pacino. And then, of course, for anyone who loves Lilo and Stitch or Disney, you've got Ohana. Ohana means family, and family means no one is left behind or forgotten. These are all incredibly famous and well-known phrases that we instantly associate to the person who said them. And a lot of those are fictional characters and stuff like that. So when you're thinking about your client as well, what sentences can you make theirs? And there's a term in advertising called mental availability. My mental availability is, in terms of quotes, is taken up by, the people who have said these quotes, not by the person who maybe said it to me. I'm immediately thinking of Martin Luther King Jr. when somebody says, I have a dream. He owns that sentence from the grave. So how can you be creating content in a written way for your client that is getting a phrase out there that they own? For Andrew, right, that is the e-tractionist. I think of Andrew, right? He's got mental availability of that phrase. And then for me, right, it's stories sell better than facts. I'm trying to turn that into, it's also trademarked. And that helps too. But if it's trademarked but nobody knows it, right, then you've got to get the content out there to start making people know it. Now, dialogue, strategic yapping. I'm doing a lot of yapping right now. But like dialogue in posts is really great, whether it was actually said, whether it was you saying it or whether it was somebody else saying it. Putting dialogue into a piece of writing professionally is really good because it just makes it feel like conversational, right? If that's the aim there. It also makes it feel like this is an ongoing discussion that people are actually having. Leaving off the previous, like quoting famous people connect to that, right? So just thinking about how if things that have been said useful in a post. Read aloud as well. The full word here is pneumono ultramicroscopic silicovolcanoconiosis, right? Which I did a lot of practice saying so that I could say that perfectly. But I made someone leave the meeting for saying that word. So don't put words out there that your audience also won't understand. Is a bit of an obvious one, but sometimes we do that, especially the more words we know, the more we want to use. But just keep in mind, what's the dialogue of your client? Thinking back to your diction, that also informs the words that you choose to write. There's people I work with where I might find myself writing a sentence like, bloody oath, mate. I would never say anything like that. I wouldn't write stuff like that. But maybe their tone is just a bit more down to earth Aussie blue, right? So I'm just writing in their style. So get familiar with your client's voice and how they work and think about, can the audience connect to that? Because as soon as they feel like they trip up trying to read content that you've made for your client, they can get defensive. Doesn't matter if that's justified or not. If they get defensive, though, they're a lot closer to the hostile territory than we want them to be, and a lot closer to being alienated from the brand. And then resonance ultimately, Slay Queen is a famous Gen Z term. I can't believe I just said it, actually. But I think it's a really good one because it just evokes an instant feeling of you're either like attracted to what this person is going to say next because you love that phrase, or you're disgusted and put off and you don't want to talk to them anymore. That's a really powerful demonstration of resonance. So we've looked at the algebra that I've written down there is tone plus voice equals style. Understanding the style of your client, tone and voice, that's diction, that's dialogue. That is informed by the creative philosophy as well, the way that they express through words. That's tone and voice equals style. And then style plus presence equals resonance. Presence being their followers, people who are looking at their brand on the regular. That's, presence is quantifiable. But then resonance is like, well, who's hitting home? Who's actually engaging? That's like things like vanity metrics, but it goes deeper than that as well. Good resonance is also creating clients and converting people from just eyeballs to paying customers. Perfect. It's applying time. So some people have already said that they've written a testimonial for Campus Life. This is your opportunity to do it again. But sort of you can treat it like, if it's your second time writing a testimonial for Campus Life, treat it like an update. What has Campus Life done for you, right, so far? How has it changed your professional journey? Things like that. Campus Life has unlocked really cool development opportunities like Creative Frontiers Storytelling Workshop, for example. So we're just going to spend 5 minutes writing, and like, don't worry about word count, just write until the timer runs out. Writing a testimonial, keeping in mind what Campus Life's creative philosophy is, which many of you were saying is, you know, practical, helping you break through from university into the real world, right? Helping you build connections. You understand its creative philosophy. How does that translate into a testimonial that you're writing that Campus Life would want to repost? Because lots of people write feedback on stuff, but it's not often worth sharing by the company who's received it because it's not supporting the brand. It's not written in the style of the brand. So I think that's something that a lot of people miss about writing a testimonial or just writing about another company. Write it in such a way that they would be stupid not to promote it and share it because it's so perfectly on brand for them. So let's practice everything that we've sort of been going over now in imagining Campus Life as your client. They're paying you for this testimonial, you know, or you're going to get something out of this. You want to do it really well. So I'll give you 5 minutes to do that, practicing all those things. Fantastic. Yeah, as we're sort of wrapping up now, you're more than welcome to send it in the chat as well for people to read. We don't have the time to sort of like read them out loud, but I think it's great to see what people have written. What Adnan's put in there is a really good example of really celebrating the goal of Campus Life and it succeeding as well, and giving him a space to work through those practical problems that he's experiencing that he couldn't solve himself, that kind of that connection to real industry leaders and get industry insights. So, and then of course that final paragraph demonstrating sort of progress, right? Demonstrating progress that's been unlocked through the Campus Life program. So that's a glowing recommendation. And I could see the team smiling. So well done, Adnan. You've made them happy. And so that's something that you should put on, you should put that on your LinkedIn, and you should tag Campus Life, for example, and the people that you mention, and you should put that on Google as well. Because testimonials and things like that are tools for you just on your personal brand to get noticed by people who maybe you want to stay top of mind to. Because you're also trying to get jobs out there. How are you using content for yourself to get noticed? Right, by giving something to them first, and they'll want to give something back to you. Perfect. Alrighty. So know what you're really saying. This is the next most important thing when you're making stuff for clients. You can understand the client voice and how to build that really well to build trust. But if you don't really know what the client would say, you're going to fumble the voice even if you're using the right words. So I'll just run through these. Like Campus Life, its motif symbol is a graduation hat. So that says a lot about like who it's for, right? It's supposed to attract students in marketing and connect them to industry business, businesses who need interns. Metaphor, does Campus Life have a metaphor or like a phrase? That's an open question, by the way. Pearly?
I think we do. I think the bridge is one of the metaphor or umbrella.
Yeah, bridge is good. We'll stick with bridge. You don't want to sort of cloud with too many metaphors. So you've got the bridge metaphor, right? Shortening the bridge, helping interns cross the bridge to real industry experience. There's subtext in there as well. And the subtext being, it's hard for people coming out of university to get jobs, especially now. So Campus Life is showing in its messaging subtly and sometimes explicitly, we understand the problem and this is our solution to the problem. And so in that way, right, a sentence saying 100 things, when Campus Life is saying we're building the bridge between university to real jobs, there's a lot being said in that. It's identifying the truth, like the reality of the situation, the fact you guys need a helping hand, but showing that they're supportive and helpful, that their tone isn't like predatory and wanting to take advantage of your eagerness and desperation, right? So there's a lot being said there. And then there's the shadow. And the shadow here, I'm just meaning like, does Campus Life feel like it's coming from a place where it's been inspired to do this work, or is it more that it's aspiring to do this work? I would say Campus Life comes across as aspirational. It's casting its shadow forward. But for you guys, it's being aspirational so that it can inspire you, the interns. And so think about the clients that you're working for. Are they an inspirational or an aspirational brand? And is that in their messaging? And how does content reflect that as well? That's important to think about too, the direction of the business and their messaging. Perfect, we won't apply that. What we are going to do though, is I'm going to send the PDF, the slides of these activities for you to practice. But I just wanted you guys to have a base from that first activity to do. And I'll send this through so you can play with that testimonial more, or play with like your LinkedIn posts that are upcoming more as well, to weave those things in. Skip over that. Going through editing, right? Don't write something that doesn't have a purpose. I talked about this at the start. Spraying and praying on LinkedIn, for example, have a point. If there's no point, if there's no purpose, it doesn't generate any interest. There are people reading it, but they're not interacting because like, that doesn't connect with me. You do you sort of thing, and it gets overlooked, suffers in the algorithm, doesn't reach anyone. Kill your darlings. This is a famous writer expression, but basically it's saying if it sounds good and that's all that it has going for it, get rid of it. Because if it sounds good, there's also a risk that maybe it's probably empty of substance. There's also a risk that maybe if it sounds good, you know, it's not going to connect, right? If that's all that there is. So, and sounding good also doesn't necessarily mean that it sounds like it makes sense. So yeah, really just check what you're writing and putting out there. Does this sound good? Like, does it just sound good, or does it just look good? Look deeper. Is there depth to it? Yes, Pearly.
Can you give a specific example of that?
Yeah, for sure. So if I said, you know, what I currently say is I run a storytelling agency where we believe stories sell better than facts. If I said, you know, I'm a storytelling writer where I believe stories mean a lot to people. Right? It sounds nice. It sounds like I mean well, but it lacks direction. It lacks, you know, there's no solution in that. I'm stating an obvious fact with no sort of way to go forward and engage. Yeah, exactly. It sounds generic. Like, it sounds all right, you know? So you're just avoiding things like that. Things that are just all right.
Over explaining the simple things.
Mm-hmm. And then you're highlighting. You're bringing the best bits into focus. And this is where in that like LinkedIn article we looked at, you could see I put some sentences on their own, made use of white space on the page, put the most important sentences on their own because they should be strong enough to stand on their own. So like you'll see most often in a LinkedIn post, the call to action at the end is on its own. The hook at the opening of a LinkedIn post is on its own. And often the pivot or the point in the article or post where the direction of the article is changing or evolving, that also stands on its own. So think about that too. Don't hide your best sentences in paragraphs. And then feedback, right? This is my favorite slide personally because I love Gordon Ramsay. He's my spirit animal if I had one. You know, somebody burnt ice cream. This is a real quote. And you're thinking, well, how could you do that? You know, it's like, well, because clearly they didn't ask someone, how should I be cooking this ice cream? And so that comes back to feedback, quality assurance. Use a person, use a teammate, use AI, use something to just double check your work. Because if you put work out there that's the equivalent of burnt ice cream for your client, that might be game over, right? So don't do that. All right. And then ultimately every word works. Alliteration, I don't mean do alliteration. This is an example. Alliteration always grabs attention, right? I just mean play with technique, play with hyperbole, exaggeration, stuff like that, where appropriate for the tone and voice of your client. Economy. We're living in a cost of living crisis. We're spending money carefully. Spend words carefully. Don't be verbose. People like Adnan was saying, he got 3 paragraphs into his post, which is a lovely post. But after 3 paragraphs, even he was like, I wrote the damn thing and I don't want to keep reading. So economy, respecting the time of the reader. And then fragment, breaking up is sometimes better. Not just for relationships, right? I'm not giving relationship advice here, but like sometimes a sentence would be better broken up. If we go back to the start of this section, which is every word works, without anything, you know, I just say every word works, rolls off the tongue. If I put a full stop at the end of each of those words, every word works. It's a lot more impactful, right? It sounds more important. Is it actually more important? Well, that depends, but it does feel and sound more impactful. So think about how you can break up words and sentences. This translates to visuals. How can you break up images to drive home a point, right? And again, I'll send this through so you can practice applying these things as well. But yeah, let's just spend a few quick minutes reading through this, and then we'll be at the end and we'll throw it to all of you for questions. So we'll just read through this though, because I want you to read and kind of think about everything. And we've sort of built a lens for taste, right, through those different elements of now we understand how we need to understand a creative philosophy of someone, of a client, of a business, to understand what their taste is for what good content is. And then the other side of that, we need to understand the way that the audience understands the client's brand. And our content is the intersection. You know, it's the communication between your client, the person you work for, and their audience. So you play this really vital communication role through content, and you have to have an understanding. It's quite a tall order, but you have to be able to view the content that you're making. Is this appealing to the taste of your person that you work for, and then to their audience? Yeah, so you're a translator. You're a translator for a business's value through content. Right. I'll go to the next slide as well, and then I'll give you a minute for that, and then we'll go to the last. But we can see in there, we can see I'm using dialogue, right? Orlando's quote, the marketeer's job is to turn the telescope around. What's in it for the audience? You know, and then I'm making the audience think too, yeah, what is it? What is in it for me, right? Because the person reading it is my audience. So that's quite clever. We're also making sure that all of those quotes are standing on their own. You know, there's a lot of sentences on their own because they're all good sentences. And then if we go to the next one, yeah, we have a joke in there. You know, I've unlocked happy hour lounges at Cairns. A free plane ticket to Cairns would be nicer still, but creative beggars can't be choosers. So brevity is always fun. My tone is a little bit of irreverence, bit of joviality. Leave that in there. And then we get serious again. A final reflection though. All right, where are all the young creators in this space? Blah, blah, blah. We have the call to action at the end. Get talking. That's quite a long call to action. I don't normally recommend that. In this context, it didn't matter though. Cool. So ultimately just be creative, right? Which if we remember, it's an expression of self. When you're working for your clients, you can be creative by expressing who they are through the modes of thinking that we've explored and some of the techniques we've unpacked. All right, and then here as well, just for yourself, because we spend a lot of time talking about how to do it for other people. I've got plenty of time in my calendar to talk to you about how you can do it for yourself. I'll leave it on this slide if you want to scan that QR code there to book a meeting with me. But questions, thoughts, remarks?
I thought that was great, Angus. I like the new slide deck. Really coming along, man. Awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah. I think you need some definitions about some of those words you mentioned because I would know some of them.
Like yeah, no worries.
And I'm sure the students know, but you know, being old school, been a long time since I was in English class. Yeah, so I'd love to hear some feedback from the team, and as in the team being the CampusLife students. I have to run off and teach a class now, so I'm going to do Bob, the other program. So I'll leave you with the team, and I think that was great. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Andrew.
All right, see you, buddy.
Great. Yeah, please rip me to shreds, team. I know I didn't give myself enough time once again for things, but believe me, the workshop is getting tighter and getting through everything eventually. But as I said, I'll send you over that material so you can do it yourself. But yeah, what were highlights? What were areas you would have liked to have more developed?
Angus, I think it's a really good workshop, and I think it's covered a lot, and you know, cover the outcomes that you set at the beginning as well. So out of the workshop, we kind of know what is the structure of the post that we want to do, like gray hook, for example, in the body. What do you want to include, like question, a lot of creative philosophy, and then end up with like a call to action. So I think it's you nailed it. It's really good. Thank you for that. Any feedback or question from our CampusLife team? And don't forget to scan that QR code as well so that you can have a complimentary audit for your personal brand.
Yeah, guys, it's not a gimmick. I do actually have useful one-on-one advice for you. So that is designed as a value add for you. So yeah, obviously no pressure, but yeah. Perfect. Well, if there are no, yes, Cassie.
How do you come up with creative hooks? Like, what's the best way to get inspiration for that?
Really good question. So here's an interesting thing, right? Like with AI, it used to be a problem beforehand that nobody could come up. Most people couldn't write enough words to fill out a page, right? We think about writing English essays in high school. Now, right, we have no shortage of words. Chat, give me 1,000 more of these. So with generative AI, if you're struggling with hooks, if that's not your strong suit, there's no crime in saying, hey, give me a bunch of good hooks on this topic in this tone. But then what you need to do is just apply that taste lens. Is this in the client's voice, or is this going to misrepresent? Is this going to alienate or connect to their audience? Yeah.
Oh, cool. Thank you. And also a really good workshop, by the way. I learned a lot from it.
Good. Thank you. Right, guys, we've got time for more questions. Quick, cram them in.
Between using numbers and stories in the hook, which one do you think is more effective?
So using stories or numbers in the hook.
Yeah.
Yeah, that depends on the number. If the number is like, last time I wrote a LinkedIn post, I got 500 clients, that's a great number. Put that number out there. But I tend to lean into the story hook myself personally, and save the numbers to use as evidence later on to back up the line. Yeah, because here's the other thing about stories, and I'll get to you in just a second, Lara. Thanks for putting your hand up. The thing about numbers is that if they sound too sensational too soon, people just don't believe them.
Yeah.
Like, nah, that couldn't be true. So it's better to build authority and trust with the reader at the start and then put numbers in later on. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, Lara.
I was just wondering, how often would you recommend posting? Like, how often is too often or not often enough?
Yeah. So here's some really interesting things. Like, it feels wrong to say you could post twice a day on LinkedIn, doesn't it? Like, does that feel illegal? And I don't know if it's illegal in my brain. You could if you wanted. I personally don't recommend it. But unless you're doing like A/B testing of a type of post, perhaps. But for me, I try to do it 3 times a week because my situation is I'm a young entrepreneur. I am running my own business. I'm trying to build content that attracts more connections. So I've got motivation to post more. And because I'm lost my train of thought. What was it? Because I style myself as a storyteller, I also need to be displaying that I can write content that's engaging and doing everything that I told you guys you should do with your content, right? So I have a lot to prove. But for like Social Star, Social Star can do just like 1 post a week, for example, because it's an established business with people who know that it's really good. Sarah's question, do you have any go-to techniques for sparking emotion in shorter pieces of writing? Yeah, there's a famous really short story that's like 6 words or something, and it goes, baby clothes for sale, never worn. Right? And how's that make you feel? Baby clothes for sale, never worn. Do you think the baby died? Is that why the clothes were never worn? Do you think that maybe they're just people who discovered they can't have children? We often jump to the negative, right? But Sarah, my answer to you would be make use of silence in a written context, like subtext. It's subtext. What are you saying between the lines in shorter pieces? Because you've got to be economical. You've got to think about, can the word that I'm using say 10 words at once? And I think that fictional story is a great example because it does say so much at once that could all be true or not at all. Yes, Liz.
So my question is, what will be your recommended length of a LinkedIn post? Because I feel like sometimes when I'm scrolling the LinkedIn posts, some of them are a bit too long, and I'm very easily to get distracted by other informations, like other notifications that pop up on my phone, so that I won't stay on that content for like any longer. So I'm wondering what would be your recommended length of a specific LinkedIn post?
That's a really good question. So for posts specifically, I think between like 150 to 500 is a great range. That's a good range. It also depends on the type of thing that you're writing about. But let's just say, generally speaking, between 150 to 500. 700 is starting to you should just turn it into an article. And then for articles themselves, like I think between 1,000 to 1,500 is the max, which is still kind of short. But LinkedIn just isn't a long form game. Substack is, a blog platform is a long form game. LinkedIn is like, give it to me fast, short, and punchy. Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries. Great. Well, team, you can send through any more questions via, I don't know, somehow. Send them to Pearly and she'll send them to me in an email or something like that. But I will send through the slides of the stuff that we couldn't practice because we ran out of time. But thank you all for engaging. It's been a joy, and this has been good practice for me as well, just refining this. And I'll save that question that just came in. But yeah, thank you so much, team, and I'll see you all in the Wednesday weekly call.
Thanks, Angus.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.